for present. And we all have busy lives, and we all sometimes get into that doing mode, that going mode, that thinking mode, and sometimes into the trance of thinking. I think we've all been there. And I think our society kind of is made that way to kind of keep on moving us in that direction, that always that sense of urgency, that sense of things that need to be done, things that we need to do. And then if we're under a little bit of stress, that activates our sympathetic nervous system, the limbic part of our brain, and of course that causes our heart rate and our blood pressure to go up, and our blood sugar to go up, and we can start running into some trouble for sure. So with mindfulness, instead of the fight, flight, or freeze, we are learning to attend and befriend. We're learning to bring awareness to what is happening in the moment, and really to pause in the middle of our life, which really brings us back to what is actually happening. So if we are in a moment of stress, if we're triggered by something or someone, instead of reacting and doing something that we might regret or saying something might regret, with mindfulness, if we can be aware of what's happening, stop, take a few breaths, feel what's happening in our body, then we have a choice of responding instead of reacting in the same old way. So we actually have an acronym for that in the MBSR program, STOP, stop, S, stop, T, take a breath, O, observe what's going on, feel it in your body, and P, proceed with kindness. That's sometimes known as the wisdom pause. Jack Kornfield calls it the wisdom pause. Tara Brach calls it the sacred pause or the loving pause. The poet Martha Postlethwaite says, "Do not try and save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life." Let me say that again. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. And the poet Judy Brown says, "What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs paced in too tight can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building fire requires attention to the spaces in between as much as to the wood." And the poet Rumi says, "Can you patiently wait until the mind settles and the water is clear? Do you know how to remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself?" And Viktor Frankl said, "The distance between the stimulus and the response is where the power and the freedom lies." So we need to practice pausing in the midst of our life, bringing us practice presencing. So what happens if we pause and don't know what to do in a situation? That's okay. Right? We have to trust ourselves that the right action will present itself eventually. How long do we pause for? Well, it could be for a few seconds, or it could be for a day if you have to. The famous couples counselors, I think John and Julie Gottman, whose Gottman method of counseling, I think, is copied throughout the world. What they would do when couples get into a heated discussion or heated argument, he would just take a time out of 15 or 30 minutes, pause, and then when they came back, you'd be able to respond in different ways. What happens if you react and regret your reaction? What would we do? Forgive ourselves, right? Because we're only human. Remember the story that Anagarika gave all of us Anagarika devotees, where she was in the monastery for 6 months in Sri Lanka and practicing presence, practicing responding and not reacting. And then when she left the monastery, she was standing at the bus stop and waited a long time, and people started congregating around her. And the bus arrived, everybody pushed her away, and she got mad and pushed everybody around her out. And so this was after 6 months of practicing. So again, forgiving ourselves when this happens. Just by stopping and taking 3 deep breaths, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, our vagus nerve, which slows down our heart rate. Lowers our blood pressure. So can you think of some situations where pausing can be helpful? You can unmute yourself if you, we mentioned if you're triggered by something or someone, but where else may pause be helpful?
In a heated discourse, when it's like there is no one's listening to anyone.
Absolutely.
And sometimes a pause kind of allows everyone to assess what's been said and what maybe they're all saying the same thing, but nobody's listening. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Pausing, notice what's going on, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, more of an embodied feeling. And then gives you a chance to maybe respond differently rather than to react. So in communication, for sure. Where else? Can you think of anything? What about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, it's not necessarily something negative where you would pause and reap benefits, right? I mean, I think sometimes just pausing while you're in a walk in the middle of the forest, for example, is another place that it's almost essential to pause.
Absolutely.
But it's not in reaction to something that's negative, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
I just read something, this twigged something. I just finished Anne Michael's latest novel called Held. And she said, let me see if I can get this right. Music creates listening and listening creates music. And when I read that, I was thinking about that exact thing, pausing to listen. And her description of creating music, she meant, this listening to the sounds of life is a form of music. But I was also thinking that's a form of pausing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We would have a follow-up evening group for the MBSR program, and one evening in the group, I asked this question, and there was a 17-year-old teenage gal who did the course and did the program, and she said, when I asked this question, she said, similar to what you're saying, what about pausing for love? And of course, she kind of stunned everybody in the room. And there were a few tears in the room, actually, very profound. And in fact, one of the homeworks we would give in the MBSR program, we would have people do a pleasant events calendar to just bring awareness to moments in nature, whether a sunset or some moments of joy. And those moments are too easily missed. And the things that people came up with was quite beautiful. So definitely pausing for nature, pausing for love. What about addiction? If I'm about to look at my email, which I looked at 5 minutes before, right? And if I can stop, take a breath, notice what's going through my mind. Oh, there might be an important email, even though I just looked 5 minutes ago. And that's probably not true. There probably isn't anything important there, right? Then I have a choice whether to look or not to look. So addiction is craving and reaction. So if you can create a gap in between the craving and the reaction. So it's one of the ways that mindfulness is being used to help with addiction. Mary, are you saying something? Are you muting or unmute?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So I had a client on the downtown east side today, and he's a crack person and user. And we talked about that, using, the addiction instead of stopping and thinking and then deciding and choosing
Mm-hmm.
and looking at what motivates that. And, he's a very intelligent human. And it was just interesting to go through the process of the decision and the mindfulness of each stage of his response to needing to do that. And I just, kind of went through a little process with him with that. At the end of it, he said, "You must have a really high IQ." I said, "No, no. I just want to help you to kind of debrief this and break it up into little increments of decisions and thinking about what you do." So addiction is something that meditation is a really important part of that process. So thank you for bringing that awareness to this conversation.
Great. Every time we pause, we're rewiring our brain. We are forming new pathways. And eventually that might become our default mechanism, right? Pima Chodron has a pausing practice. If you listen to some of her podcasts, she has a definite pausing practice. What if we pause afterwards, after we've reacted and regretted the reaction? Well, we're still doing something. We're still rewiring our brain. Right?
I see that pause, and Eddie, as a opportunity to forgive oneself, because we can't always get it perfect all the time.
No, no.
And I find that it took me a long time to allow myself to forgive myself in a genuine way, not just say, oh yeah, okay, I forgive myself, but truly feeling it. And it's so I was going to say freeing in a sense. And then of course remember to do metta when I'm sitting, and add that in. So the pause is so important. And I really like what you said, that it rewires our brain. And it really does. I never thought it that way, but it does. Yeah.
Any other situations? What about when we get an email or a text that kind of rubs us the wrong way? It's good to maybe pause before we respond, right? Take a breath, notice what's going on. That pause is really the basis of all the mindfulness medical interventions. I mean, to simplify it, for example, anxiety or panic attacks, if people can just bring awareness to what's happening in the moment, stop, notice what thoughts are going in your head, seeing them as just thoughts, not necessarily the truth. Ground yourself in the body, take some breaths, find a place to ground yourself. So it's really the basis of all the medical interventions of mindfulness. And again, really, the reason why we practice and meditate every day is to become more mindful in our daily life, become more present in our daily life, right?
I'm thinking of a totally different example, which is to pause what you might be doing, pause from, pause to help someone, where you see a need outside of yourself. So a way of stepping outside of yourself, the self. That takes mindfulness, because you could be self-absorbed at that moment, and you might just have a fraction of noticing something and saying, oh, and recognizing a need. It could be somebody who's about to spill some groceries and you run to pick it up, or whatever it is, just something. But it requires that attention outside of oneself, a pause from what you think might be important in the moment, and just to respond to a need outside of yourself. That could be a pause too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
For me, pausing is just an act of mindfulness. To pause requires that you be mindful just at that moment. So just the very act of pausing is an act of mindfulness as far as I'm concerned.
Brings you back to what's actually happening in your life, right? Absolutely. This is what the wise poet Pablo Neruda says in the poem, Keeping Quiet. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not hurt his hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead in winter and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. Any other comments before we end with a loving kindness meditation? Any? So we're all going to practice pausing, right? All right, well, once again, let's close our eyes and allow ourselves once again to be right here. Bringing full awareness to our breath and to our bodies. Allowing ourselves to still be here. Giving ourselves this gift of being right here. And remember, when we take our seat in this way, this meditative seat, we're really making a statement that our life is important enough to be here for it. This is really a radical act of kindness and love that we are giving ourselves right now. And the loving kindness meditation is a way to recognize these qualities of heart and mind. If we keep doing it enough, we can recognize these qualities of heart and mind when they do occur in middle, like in our normal day-to-day life. And sometimes, as someone just mentioned, in those ferocious and agitated mind states, a loving kindness meditation is the antidote. When we can't apply mindfulness and presence. So imagine that you are now the recipient of some unconditional love, whether it's the love from someone you know, or someone in your imagination, or a godlike figure, the Buddha. Allow yourself to be unconditionally loved for exactly who you are. Not having to do anything, not having to change anything. Just allowing yourselves to bask in this unwavering, unconditional love. Just as a mother loves a child, allow yourself to rock in the beating heart, the loving beating heart. Being loved for who you are exactly in this moment. And now allow yourself to become both the source and the recipient of this love. And you may want to say these words to yourself or any similar phrases. May I be well and happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May my whole being be well and happy and filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness to the depth and breadth of my being. May every cell of my body be well and happy. May I be healthy. May I be whole. May I be free from inner and outer harm. May I be safe and protected. May I be happy and content to whatever degree possible. May I live with ease. May my heart be open. May my heart be soft. May I be kind and giving. May I be loved and loving. May I be trusted and trusting. May I be balanced and at ease. May I be free. May I be liberated. May I be free from worry and anxiety. May I be free from suffering. May I be present. May I see the light. May I bathe in the light. May I be filled with loving kindness to the depths and breadth of my being. And in this state of loving kindness, let me send out loving thoughts to those who I have a positive affinity for. May all my teachers, past and present and future, may they too be well and happy, safe and protected. May my parents and grandparents, alive or dead, may they too be well, happy, safe and protected. And if you so wish, you may invite an ancestor to come and sit with you right now. May my partner be well and happy, be safe and protected. May my dearest children, grandchildren, born or yet to be born, may they too be well and be happy. May my siblings, relatives, and all my dear friends, near or far, may they too be well, happy, safe, and protected. And may all of us here this evening, sharing this space together, sharing this meditation together, may all of us be well and happy, safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm, happy and content to whatever degree possible, and may we all live with ease. And in this state of loving kindness, let's send our loving thoughts to those whom we may have a negative affinity for, to those whom we may have harmed or who may have harmed us knowingly or unknowingly. To the best of our ability, let us wish them to be well and happy. And in this state of loving kindness, the state of well-being, the state of health, let us send out loving thoughts to those who are less fortunate than us. All those people who are now in war-torn countries, Middle East, Ukraine, Africa, famine-stricken countries, flood-ravaged countries, earth-ravaged countries. Those people living on the streets, in hospitals, in prisons and institutions. Those people in the depths of depression. May we breathe in all their sorrows, breathe in all their suffering, and may we breathe out compassion. Breathe in their sorrows and breathe out compassion. May all our 4 great races be well and happy. May we live together in harmony and understanding. And may all our world leaders be well and happy. May they wage peace and not war. And may we live in harmony and understanding with our great Mother Earth. May we continue to nurture her as she has nurtured us over the eons. May we protect her and cherish her to the best we can. Loving kindness extending to the furthest reaches of our planet. Loving kindness extending beyond our planet into the furthest reaches of our universe. Loving kindness extending in all directions. May all beings everywhere, seen or unseen, heard or unheard, alive or dead, of this world or other worlds, born or yet to be born. May we all be well and happy. May we all see the light. May we all be liberated. May we all be free. May we all walk in beauty. May our mindfulness practice nurture us and those around us. Loving kindness in all directions, north, south, east, west, and points in between, and we shall receive loving kindness from all beings everywhere. Loving kindness to all. Loving kindness to all. Loving kindness to all.